من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله رب العالمين والصلاة والسلام على خير خلقه وخاتم أنبيائه ورسله سيدنا وشفيعنا بالقاسم محمد وعلى آل بيته الطيبين الطاهرين المعصومين المنتجبين رب اشرح لي صدري ويسر لي أمري واحلل عقدة من لساني يفقه قولي أما بعد فقد قال سبحانه وتعالى في كتابه المجيد وهو أصدق القائلين بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم يا أيها الذين آمنوا اتقوا الله ولتنظر نفس ما قدمت لغد واتقوا الله إن الله خبير بما تعملون صلوات. Well, congratulations to, I guess, all of us. We are almost towards the midpoint of this noble month of Ramadan, the month of worship, reflection, introspection, and the month of muhasaba or self-evaluation, self-interrogation and giving ourselves a report card. It is also a month in which we try to enhance our relationship with our family, with our friends, with our relatives. But the most important aspect and dimension of the month of fasting is to purify our morals and ethics and spirituality. How can we enhance our spiritual existence? In the other 11 months, it is very common for us to accumulate many of the spiritual diseases. It's very normal. We are human beings. And this is a time for us to cleanse some of the spiritual diseases, to purge them. What kind of diseases am I talking about? For example, things like extravagance, wastefulness, arrogance, jealousy, consumerism, right? You want the latest iPhone, you can't do without it. Consumerism, individualism. Individualism means that, I am the center of the universe. And all of them, extravagance, wastefulness, instant gratification, jealousy, selfishness, backbiting, self-righteousness. I was just talking with Brother Devji. Self-righteousness is a very fatal spiritual disease, to regard oneself as somehow spiritually superior than others, having the right to judge others, having a license to claim who is going to paradise and who is going to hellfire. It's almost becoming God, right? To be able to assign who is going. Self-righteousness and self-arrogance is also some of the very important spiritual diseases that we work on. Now, if that is the if that is the main function of this month of fasting, like the Quran says, لَعَلَّكُمْ تَتَّقُونَ, then if you fail to attain some of these objectives, then we have some traditions that say that the fast is of no value, it's void. Even though we have been fasting, we have been trying to abstain from food and drink and so and so, but some of the hadith literature tells us that it will not be acceptable to God. For example, Imam Ali ibn Abi Talib alayhi salatu wasalam says, in one of the hadiths, he says, "Kam min sa'imin laysa lahu min siyamihi illa dhama." There are many who fast, but they attain nothing out of fasting except hunger and thirst. وَكَم مِّن قَائِمٍ لَيْسَ لَهُ مِنْ قِيَامِهِ إِلَّا الْعَنَاءُ. And there are many who stay awake at night in prayers, but they attain nothing except for fatigue, exhaustion, and tiredness. حَبَّذَا نَوْمُ الْأَقْيَاسِ وَإِفْطَارُهُمْ. The sleep of a person who is wise and the eating of a person who is wise and God conscious is far superior, says Imam Ali, than the one, of course, mustahab fast we are talking about, recommended fast, is far superior than the fast and the staying awake at night in adoration of God. So you can see the superiority of trying to cleanse and purge some of our spiritual diseases. Salawat. So this is a month of muhasaba. Muhasaba means self-evaluation, right? Self-critique, and to be very honest about it, not to be, so biased, to be objective and trying to analyze ourselves as to what things that we do are good and we should be proud of, and what things that we do require some work and require some kind of polishing of the heart. The best thing is every night we have an opportunity, before we go to bed, we can take an enumeration, accounting of our report card for the day, look at things that we have done which are good and positive, and we can pat ourselves in the back. And then, of course, there are things that we need to improve upon. We have weaknesses, we have deficiencies, and this requires moral courage. But if we engage in this muhasaba, self-evaluation, it can lead to some very positive outcome. Why do I say this? There is a hadith of the Prophet who says, Man istawa yawmahu fahuwa maghboon. The Prophet says, any person whose 2 days are identical, his today and yesterday are the same, he or she is the loser, because you have lost the capital of time. If I haven't improved myself spiritually, morally, ethically from yesterday, it could be a small improvement, but there has to be some kind of incremental improvement. If there is no improvement, the Prophet is saying we are losers in the sense that we have lost the capital of time, which is going to get exhausted. Nobody lives forever. Even with the advancement of science and technology, the life is still limited, and therefore the capital has to be maximized. And the Prophet said a person whose today is worse than yesterday, well, of course, that is quite disastrous, because now you are going even backwards. You're actually regressing rather than moving forward. So it's far better to be on the same parity rather than to go into regression. So the hadith is telling us that we need to do this self-reflection every day. Otherwise, we cannot improve on a daily basis for our spirituality. Salawat. And the focus ought to remain on ourselves. How can I improve myself? Don't worry too much about others. We have a tendency to dig out the faults of others, to go into a mission, to excavate the weaknesses of others, and we try to somehow magnify them. And in the process, we are trying to claim that I'm superior, I'm self-righteous. That's spiritual arrogance. We say in the name of Amr bil Ma'ruf. Amr bil Ma'ruf has many, many conditions. Amr bil Ma'ruf does not mean that you have a right to humiliate the other person. It has some very, very strict guidelines. Amr bil Ma'ruf and Nahy anil Munkar means that before I tell you and give you advice, I must be practicing what I preach, otherwise that cannot be. It is part of my self-centeredness and arrogance to go around looking at the faults of others under a magnifying scope, but I forget myself. And this is the meaning of self-righteousness, self-arrogance, is to go around pointing fingers at others. We need to focus, and the month of Ramadan says, لَعَلَّكُمْ تَتَّقُونَ, focus on yourself. We need to focus on ourselves. Imam Ali in Nahj al-Balagha, he says, مَنْ نَظَرَ فِي عَيْبِ نَفْسِهِ اشْتَغَلَ عَنْ عَيْبِ غَيْرِهِ. A person who focuses on his own faults, his own mistakes and weaknesses, will be so preoccupied, he will not have an opportunity or the time to look at the faults of others. Because we have many, many problems ourselves. Rather than focusing on others, if I focus on myself, Imam Ali says, I won't have any time. No time will be left for me to go around looking around at the faults of others. So we need to focus on self-improvement. Salawat. Look at this beautiful Quranic verse in chapter 59, verse 18, where again God is reminding us, focus on the self. Focus on spiritual improvement, purging the spiritual diseases on ourselves. It says, Ya ayyuhalladhina amanu attaqullah, O you who believe, be mindful of God, be God aware. If we know that God is present amongst us, we'll be very careful not to make mistakes. If we have a sense of God's presence all the time, of course, we'll commit fewer sins. So, ittaqullah, be God aware. وَلْتَنْظُرْ نَفْسٌ مَا قَدَّمَتْ لِغَدٍ. And look inwardly, look inside yourself. What have I sent for my tomorrow? مَا قَدَّمَتْ لِغَدٍ. Meaning to say, for the day of akhirah, for the day of judgment, what kind of assets and capital I have sent for myself for ghadan, for tomorrow. Myself, it's not about others. God is saying, look inwardly, within yourself, and ask yourself, am I improving for tomorrow? Am I able to give an account on the day of judgment? It's talking about individual accountability, not trying to somehow advise others and guide others and preach to others, rather preach to our own selves. Salawat. And then interestingly, God says again, wattaqullah. He says twice. In this one verse, he says, be mindful of God. Be God aware that God is present all the time. A sense of God consciousness, His presence. He says, wattaqullah. Inna Allaha khabirun bima ta'amalun. God is aware of all that you do. Once again, the focus is individual transformation, not to focus on the faults of others. And let me share with you a story that Rumi gives us in Masnavi, which is related to my theme. On one occasion, the story goes, Rumi likes to make stories and then he gives you the moral at the end. Rumi says that Nabi Isa was leaving a village and one person says, I want to follow you, I want to accompany you. And Nabi Isa says, that's fine, you can come along with me. They go along the path, and lo and behold, this companion of Nabi Isa, he finds a few bones of skeleton lying in a ditch. And he begins to wonder, who did this belong to? He asked Nabi Isa that you are the great prophet, you are able to give life to the dead. Show me how I can resurrect these dead bones. I'm curious to know who this was. Teach me the formula of Ism Azam so that I can be of some use and I can celebrate that I have done something. Nabi Isa ignores him. He is persistent. He says, no, please teach me the formula that I must say so that this particular bones will be resurrected and revived. Nabi Isa says, it is not the matter of the words. It is not because I have somehow memorized a few words that I'm able to revive the dead back to life. It has to do with the purity of the self. It has to do with the purity of my soul, the training and conditioning of my soul, which takes ages. It is not something you can just say, teach me, and then I'll be able to revive the bones. It is not a simple matter. So then the person says, okay, if I am not qualified to revive these dead bones, why don't you do it? Again, Nabi Isa is not prepared to just play this as a game. And he makes a very important statement, which is the punchline. It says, Morde khud ra raha kardast ou, morde bigane ra juyad rufu. This person is forgetting the decayed soul of himself, the one who is saying, revive the bones. He is forgetting his own dead soul, says Rumi. Instead, he is focusing on reviving the dead bones of a stranger. Rumi is saying, focus on yourself. Why are you so curious to know about who this skeleton belongs to? That's not the focus of life. Focus on your soul. And spiritually, what Nabi Isa is saying is that that person is spiritually dead. Morde khudra, it says. Morde khudra raha kardastu. He has forgotten his own dead soul. And he's so much concerned about the spirituality and the soul of others. This is the message that Rumi gives. And Rumi gives in Masnavi many, many stories. And the stories are, of course, made up, but the story always has a moral at the end. Salawat. One of the other spiritual diseases that is very fatal and very dangerous is this one. It's known as Ashirkul Khafi. It means polytheism, but a hidden kind of polytheism, concealed polytheism. The Prophet says, Inna akhwafa ma akhafu alaykum ashirkul asghar. The Prophet tells his companions that after my departure, I'm very worried about you. The most thing I'm worried about you is ashirkul asghar. That kind of polytheism which is hidden, which is concealed. It's not like you'll be worshipping idols. It will not be so evident. It is going to be hidden. So the people ask him, Wama shirkul asghar, O Prophet, what is this hidden shirk, hidden polytheism? The Prophet says, Ar-riya. Ar-riya. Trying to exhibit yourself, trying to display yourself that I'm very pious. I'm more pious than you. I'm more righteous than you. I'm more holy than you. I pray more than you. I do more fast than you. I give more zakat than you. I pray namaz the tahajjud. I go around bragging about my good deeds. Ar-riya. We are doing things for public display. Public demonstration is not for the sake of God. The intention right now is not for God. The intention is because I want to impress you that I'm a very spiritual human being. I'm a very pious human being. I'm a very righteous human being. Well, then the intention is now corrupted. Is it the intention for the sake of God, or the intention is for public display and public adoration? Public should talk about me. So-and-so is so pious. Have you seen how he prays his long prayers and he recites long surahs and, right? This is another disease. And the Prophet is reminding us, this is part of polytheism. Why? Because you're associating somebody with God now. You're associating the pleasure of God with the pleasure of human beings. You're concerned about human beings' reaction to you. You are not concerned anymore about just God. The hadith goes further. He says, Al-Qiyamah, إِذَا جُزِيَ النَّاسُ بِأَعْمَالِهِمْ اذهبوا إلى الذين كنتم تراعون في الدنيا فانظروا هل تجدون عندهم جزاء. On the day of judgment, says the Prophet, when he will be handing out the rewards for those who did good deeds, he says, اذهبوا, go. The Prophet says, go to those people whom you were trying to impress, تراعون. Go and ask for your reward from those people whom you were trying to display as being so pious. هل تجدون عندهم جزاء. Do you think they will have reward for you? It's a question mark. It's a rhetorical question. Is that if you do for others, God is saying then the intention is now corrupted, is polluted, and therefore it becomes part and parcel of polytheism. Salawat. We are also commemorating the birthday of our second Imam, Imam al-Hasan alayhi salatu abdullah salam. Imam Hasan went through some very difficult period in his life, especially after the death of his father. Many of the companions around him had begun to abandon him because they were bought off by Muawiyah through bribery, through intimidation, even through killing, through murder, through promises that if you come to me, then I will give you so-and-so. This was a common tactic and strategy. Historians of that time have not been faithful to Imam Hasan. They have not been accurate in recording the history of Imam Hasan's time and Muawiyah's time, because it was sponsored by the Umayyad dynasty. It was paid for and sponsored by the Umayyad dynasty. They used to say, for example, that if you can bring a hadith in praise of the Umayyads, we'll give you a prize. And if you bring, a hadith that talks down upon the Ahlul Bayt, we'll give you a prize. So there was a lot of fabrication of the hadith, lot of manufacturing of the hadith, because people were concerned about filling their pockets, and there was a lot of fear. Muawiyah was a person who had no limits, no qualms in terms of killing. Hujr ibn Adi, if you remember. He had no qualms at all in bribing, in intimidating. And therefore there was also the sense of fear in the community. And historians have not been, as I said, faithful to Imam Hasan alayhi salatu Abdullah salam salawat. You have to be very careful when you read historical accounts. You have to ask who is writing. What is his motivation? Who is sponsoring this project? Why is he writing this? Is he really a neutral observer who is recording the historical accounts of what has transpired, or does he have an agenda? Likewise for the hadith, you need to ask who is relating this hadith. You will find many of the historians were paid off by the Umayyad dynasty, and therefore the accounts that we have about Imam Hasan is full of falsification, Lots of lies. And it should not come as a surprise to you. Even today, for example, Saudi Arabia has sponsored a series of program on Muawiyah, having spent $100 million to try to revise and distort history. Imagine even today you can do it. What about the time of Muawiyah in the 7th century, in the 8th century? Even today they are distorting history. If you look at some of the episodes, you will see that they are playing with history. They are trying to rehabilitate Muawiyah and somehow make him into a very good companion. They have an agenda. Having spent lots of money, this 100 million could have been spent in Gaza, could have been spent in the project of a Zahra Trust, for example, right? The money could have been spent so wisely and so fruitfully. But what they are trying to do, as I said, they are trying to revise and distort history. If you are a good scholar, you should look at some of the earlier manuscripts of the works that are printed. Some of the controversial works, you will find that they have been revised and deleted. So if you look at the earlier manuscript of a particular work, and then you look at the revised and the new edition, you will see that they have removed certain parts of historical account that were against so and so and so and so. Any of the companions. They are trying to revise history and trying to, like I said, remove and cleanse and purge things that are part of even the history. At-Tabari, for example, I can show you examples of At-Tabari's history, which has been revised and distorted in the new edition. If you look at the earlier manuscripts available in Iran, in Iraq, and so on, you will find that there is a difference. And that difference is because, as I said, human being is trying to distort and revise history. Salawat. It should come as no surprise to you that, a'udhu billah, Imam Ali was cursed in prayers, every prayer for 60 years. Imam Ali ibn Abi Talib. Can you imagine the historical account of that era? When people think that your namaz is incomplete if you don't curse him. You must curse him in the qunut. This was the propaganda of Muawiyah, the Umayyads. Remember, Muawiyah was in power when Imam Hasan came for already 20 years. He was appointed by Umar. So already he had full control over the Syrians. He had brainwashed them. That somehow the Syrians, some of them didn't know how to give zakat and how to pray. They had to ask people of Medina to come and teach them. So Syria, Muawiyah had full control over them. They didn't know who is Ahlul Bayt. And therefore they could easily, say bad things about Imam Ali in every prayer. Imagine the situation, the context, the environment. Do you think that a historian can write proper history in that era? Not possible. You will lose your life. And that's why Imam Hasan's account, in most of the historical account, are really falsification and inaccurate. On the day of Arafat, they had made up a hadith that it is mustahab to send la'an upon Imam Ali on the day of Arafat for thawab. This was the situation of our community. In a matter of few years, the Muslim community had descended to the depth of depravity. And then, of course, we have then Karbala and so on. What I'm saying is, the Muslim community digressed at a very exponential rate, very fast, very rapid. And then we have kingship under Muawiyah. And therefore, you can see that it is no surprise that all these things were happening. It is shocking to us right now to say, well, how is it possible? Imam Ali, the one who was the closest companion to the Holy Prophet, who grew up in the Prophet's house, who married his daughter. He was there with the Prophet in all places, in all crises. How is it possible that such a noble companion can be cursed? This is the distortion of history, brainwashing the community to believe through bribery, intimidation, and through killing. Salawat. I give you one more example of what I mean by distortion of history. Until the time of Umar ibn Abdul Aziz, they used to slander Imam Ali. And they used to think there's a spiritual reward in it. Today, for example, one of the criticism of the Ahl Sunnah wal Jama'ah is that, how come some of the Shia, you send la'an upon so-and-so and so-and-so? Well, you were giving la'an. Muawiyah was giving la'an in every prayer. Was that not wrong as well? It was absolutely atrocious, a disgrace. Right? Well, I'm not encouraging people to do la'an on so-and-so and so-and-so because it only creates hatred. It only creates ill will and hostility. And then you see bloodshed. People being killed. Our job should be like Imam Ali, who was so persistent in trying to create reconciliation and harmony and peace and coexistence. Salawat. You must be aware of Sahih Bukhari, one of the famous collections of Sunni hadith that they regard to be one of the most authentic. Bukhari goes on a mission for a number of years, traveling to different places in the Muslim empire, trying to gather hadith from wherever he could find. Because he wanted to compile the words of the Prophet before they are lost. He had gathered, through his technique, 600,000 hadith altogether. After all his effort, all his, mission of traveling from here and there, and many, many years of hard work. From these 600,000, he only accepted 7,500. Less than 1.5%. From 600,000 hadiths that he had gathered carefully, trying to filter out those that were made up and fabricated, even within those hadiths he found so much falsehood, so much fabrication. He only accepted 7,000, let's say 300 hadith. And some of them are repetitive hadith. If you take out the repetitive hadiths, it's maybe only about 3,000 hadiths. Imagine 600,000 hadith, and then you shrink it down to 7,000. Imagine the level of fabrication going on of the hadith because of bribery. Therefore, when you are a scholar, you need to examine the hadith very carefully. You have to scrutinize the hadith very carefully. You can't accept everything that comes out that, yeah, this is the hadith of the... I'm telling you, less than 1.5% was accepted by Bukhari. The other 98% he trashed away. And even in this 2%, I can find for you many contradictions in Sahih Bukhari. Even after all this filtration, the existing Sahih Bukhari has many contradictions like any other hadith collection. Our Shia works are no exception. We also have contradictions in our hadith collection. It's very clear. In that era, hadith was being made up on a massive scale. And therefore, you have to be extremely careful and scrutinize the hadith and make sure that the word that we are ascribing to the Prophet or the Imam truly belongs to the Prophet and the Imam. Salawat. I will pause here. I don't want to, come in between you and this very nice and, delicious, I saw iftar menu that's going to be served, so I don't want you to be unhappy either. So therefore, let's conclude here with du'as, and inshallah, may God accept our amal. Let us pray. Lord of healing and comfort, we implore you to restore full health to all those who are sick. Ya Allah, you are a God of justice. You care for those who are oppressed. We know that you love those who are poor. We know that you love those who are suffering. Show us your power of intervention and restore justice in this violent world, especially in the Gaza and West Bank. A lot of suffering, a lot of human suffering. Incredible. Genocidal. Protect us from hopelessness and despair in the face of injustice, oppression, and suffering. Infuse in us the capacity to love each other. Infuse in us the capacity to forgive each other. Infuse in us the discernment to know right from wrong. Endow us with clarity of mission in life. What is supposed to be our mission? Sometimes it is very confusing. What am I supposed to be doing? Should I be spending all my time in the academy? Should I be, I'm talking about myself. Should I be with the community as well? What should I... Show us clarity in what is our purpose in life, our mission in life. Give us tawfiq to follow in the footsteps of the immaculate saints, the ma'asumeen, such that we are prepared to receive the Imam of the time. Make us grateful for all your blessings. Ya Allah, increase our faith and trust in no one else except you. On the day of judgment, hold us to account on the basis of your grace and mercy, not on the basis of your justice. We cannot tolerate the justice of God. We will need His grace and mercy and love and compassion. Ya Allah, accept our ibadat in this holy month. Rabbana taqabbal minna innaka anta as-sami'ul alim. Salawat.